I'm joined by Mecca Aikens, who is a first generation law school student who has a lot of academic responsibilities. She clerks and she managed to get to college with very minimal debt. We're going to find out exactly how she was able to do all that and more. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Break into Law School. I'm your host, Lavetta Jenkins. Welcome, Mecca. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, I have looked at all of the little notes about you, and you are a wonder. Tell us all a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Mecca Aikens. I am a current second year student at Georgetown Law. I am originally from Hinesville, Georgia, which is a small military town from Savannah, Georgia. And I'm just really excited to talk to you today.
Listen, I'm excited to have you because you are in law school, and your parents and yourself have found out a way to do it with minimal debt. So I want to get into that. How did they manage that for you?
So it's two main things that they did to kind of set me up for success. One thing they did was do a 529 savings plan. And that they saved around like 40 or so $1,000, which is great. It's a very large number. But if I didn't really hustle and get scholarships and stuff like that throughout my undergrad and law school career, I definitely wouldn't have been able to kind of sustain that money throughout my educational career. And then another really big thing that I was able to get was my dad was in the military and he retired. And so he had the GI Bill and Yellow Ribbon Aid. And with Georgetown specifically, they're a private school. However, so if it's a private school, you'll get the GI Bill aid, and that's usually around like 25,000. But each private school has a very specific way of how they do the yellow ribbon aid. And for Georgetown, they will match essentially whatever is left outside of the university scholarship that you get from them. So I get it for 2 years, and then my brother gets the other 2 years. And so for the first 2 years of my law school, I essentially don't have to worry about paying anything.
Ooh, that's amazing. Shout out to your parents for having that thought, long time ago to make sure their kids were set up. That's cool. So you are first generation law school student. What made you decide to go into law?
So my mom was really big on putting me and my brother into a lot of different like summer camps to get a bunch of experiences so that by the time we got to college, we kind of had an understanding of what we wanted to do. And one summer before my junior year of high school, she put me in a law camp that was hosted by the Savannah 100 Foundation, which is a youth organization that puts on a lot of different camps and programs throughout the summer and throughout the school year to kind of get kids in the area exposed to various career paths and whatnot. And so with the law camp, I was able to participate in a mock trial, shadow different judges and attorneys in the area, and just get more information about the legal field. And I really fell in love with it. And through that specific program, I met my mentor, Mr. Lloyd Johnson, who just further invested in my career and was like, let's talk about what you want to do and how you want to do it. And honestly, he's been such a big help in kind of helping me figure out how to navigate the legal space. And so that's pretty much how I got to be where I am today.
So all because of a summer camp and a mentor. Are you doing anything now to kind of mentor people who are coming after you, or are you still involved with other students and helping?
Yes, that's actually a really big thing for me. My mom has always instilled in me how important it is to give back to those that have given to me. And so, with the Savannah 100 Foundation, when I was an undergrad, because I was only about 2.5 hours away from home, I would go home for we have a year-long program called Courts in Session. So I'll go home about once a month and help out. I was an assistant mock trial coach. I would facilitate workshops about financial aid and like the college and law school admissions process. I would participate on panels, just giving insight and advice about my experience. And then now that I'm in law school, I'm able to look over personal statements, talk to students about, the law school admissions process and about law school in general. So I really just try to give perspective about what to expect in law school. I think it's really important. And even now, I'm a student fellow for the admissions office at Georgetown. So it just gives me another avenue to speak more to prospective students about Georgetown specifically and just the law school admissions process in general.
So, what exactly do you do as a student fellow?
Yeah, so one aspect of it is, of course, helping out with the admissions team. So if we're packing admissions packages and stuff like that, I'll help out. But the main thing that I'll do is speak with prospective students that come in to the admissions office to maybe get a self guided tour or just wanted to get more information about Georgetown in general. And so I have the ability to answer any questions about my experience at Georgetown, give insight into the law school admissions process, and kind of demystify what they might expect from the process and whatnot. I think a big thing, especially at like a T14, which is like the 1 through 14 higher ranked law schools, one thing I think a lot of people think is that you have to have, a super high LSAT and a super high GPA. And I, for one, am the first to tell people that my LSAT score was nowhere near the range that was on Georgetown's website. And I think that's important to like let people know that you can shoot outside of your range. My GPA was within like the range of what was accepted, and I think it's important to maybe have one or the other. But I definitely wouldn't, count yourself out simply because you might feel a little bit insecure about your score or insecure about your GPA. I think at most what you should do is still apply, maybe write an addendum about, your lower GPA, your lower LSAT score. But I would say if that's a school that you really want to be at, definitely apply, and all they can do is tell you.
That's very good. And I kind of talk to people about that a lot. If you don't ask, of course it's a no. But if you do ask, now you're at a 50-50. So even if you know the LSAT or something didn't work out very good for you, and you might just be a little bit under what you think is desired, still go ahead and ask. You never know. You might win them over in, GPA or personality, or somebody could have had a kind heart that day and just kind of let them in there. So your hopes, I believe, are to work and eventually become a judge. What are you doing right now to kind of make sure you're on that path?
So, for this past summer and this current summer, I will be working at a big law firm in DC. And I primarily wanted to work at a big law firm, one, because you're able to save a lot of money. And if you're not in the financial position that I am in, then you're able to pay off your loans fairly quickly. But also, the big law firms, they just have a lot of resources. So, you get a lot of training at these firms. So, even if you don't see yourself becoming partner or anything like that, you are able to develop your skills, I think, a lot faster in these firms. I do want, and you don't necessarily have to do this like after you are in a law firm, but in between my law firm years, I do want to clerk for a judge. I think it's important, especially considering that I want to be a judge, to have that clerkship experience. And because I have that goal in mind, currently I'm externing for a judge on the DC circuit, just to kind of get more of that clerkship experience, making sure that this is actually what I want to do, and being able to talk to my judge and other judges on the circuit, just to get a little bit more insight into their journey.
So you're going to start off kind of clerking around and then move on up. I like that idea. Now, I know that we did some talking beforehand, and you said that when you got to school, you were prepared for the studying and all that other kind of stuff, but the socialization was a little bit of a shock for you. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think when you say that you want to go to law school, everybody talks about how hard the classes are, how much reading you're going to do, but nobody really talks about the networking and how important that is. And I think it comes at a bit of a shock for a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that I just need to have the highest GPA, I need to have a stacked resume, and I'm solid. But I think what's important for people to know is how social the legal career is. If you don't know how to talk to people, if you don't know how to network, if you don't know how to connect with people beyond what the work assignment is, I think you will struggle with like finding a job or like being able to connect with people beyond what's on your resume. And sometimes knowing how to network gets you a little bit further in the process than what's on your resume, and what your GPA is. I know for me, for the firm that I'm working at, my HR manager told me like I had your resume flagged from a networking reception that I talked to you at. Mind you, I was doing so much networking, I don't even remember talking to her. But it's just those little things and having those small conversations that could lead to something down the line that you're not even thinking about. So extremely important.
Yeah, so even if you feel like you probably don't want to go to that networking mixer or whatever, go, because you
Right.
just never know who you're going to meet there that might pull your resume, set it to the side because you made an impression. And obviously you did, and you didn't even remember making that
Didn't
impression.
remember. Because it
Wow,
could be
that
a lot. It could be a lot, but
yeah.
definitely if you can, if you have the space, if you have the capacity, I would 100% recommend going to any networking events.
Mm. So, what would you say to someone who's maybe going into their 1L and they might be feeling a little bit intimidated about everything that's going to be changing once they get into law school?
I think one piece of advice that I kind of got going into the law school and then navigating my 1L and then 2L years is do the things that you genuinely care about, do the things that you are actually interested in, because there are so many opportunities and so many ways that you can be involved on campus, and you don't want to get swamped doing things that you aren't actually interested in. I feel like a lot of people go into law school thinking I have to stack my resume, and that's not the case because whatever you do in law school, it's going to look good and you're going to be working. So if you're going to be busy, at least be busy doing things that you're actually passionate about and you care about. And I think that's extremely important because the school will always be there, the classes will always be there, you're always going to be busy, but at least be busy doing the things that you genuinely care about.
I think you have a lot of academic responsibilities as well, other than, the student fellows and all that. What else are you into?
So, I am the current academic chair for the Black Law Students Association at Georgetown. And so, with that, I do a lot of academic support, mainly for our 1Ls, just making sure that they're getting acclimated into their classes and that they know what academic resources are out there. One of the main things that I do is do the Bolsa tutoring program for each semester. And so, it's just an amazing resource that we're able to, provide tutor. We're actually able to pay our tutors. They don't necessarily have to just volunteer. And then it just gives the 1Ls another opportunity to get assistance with their classes. And then I am also I will be for the upcoming volume of our journal. I'm the notes editor for the Georgetown Journal of Law and Modern Critical Race Perspectives. And I think that is another fabulous way of being involved on campus, but also if you know that you want to clerk or if you want to be a judge, or if you want to go into litigation, I think that is a great way to get involved on campus. And then another smaller role that I have is I'm a rep for Barbary, which is a bar prep company, which is a really great way if you don't do big law, because usually with the big law firms, they'll pay for your bar prep courses. And if you don't, if you go into public interest and you're a rep for a bar prep company, usually they'll give you either a very heavy discount or essentially just pay for it in full. So another little tidbit about bar prep courses because they are expensive, and I feel like sometimes people aren't really thinking about bar prep in their 1L year. But if you do it, if you become a rep during your 1L year, at the end of it, you're good to go.
Ooh, very good tidbit that you just threw out there. It's all about networking and making sure that, these doors that might be a little bit cracked, get your
Hmm.
foot in there and make sure that you can kind of make some space for yourself. I never knew that doing that would end up, setting you up later on. So, what other tips do you think you've got in there that you might want to share with someone else?
Ooh, honestly, I would say talk to the 2Ls and 3Ls during your 1L year because if I didn't talk to the upperclassmen when I was as a prospective student, when I was trying to like figure out like the scholarship process and stuff like that, there was a 2L who is now graduated. She's fabulous. She kind of gave me insight into the scholarship process because Georgetown, it's a little weird. You don't automatically be considered. You have to like inquire about it. And if I didn't talk to her, I wouldn't know. Talking to upperclassmen, I feel like just gives you a little bit more insight into like certain things that you might not be like aware of. Like the Barbie thing, I didn't know about if you're a rep, you will be able to get a discount, or if you're in big law, you're able to get that money back. But talking to the upperclassmen who are already there, who already know, who kind of understand, like, okay, I need to talk to this person for this, or go here for this resource. You're not going to know that as a 1L. So making sure that you're able to not only network with firms and like professionals, but be able to network with the upperclassmen, invaluable.
Gotta be. Listen, we have a conference coming up called the Break into Law School Conference, and we're doing a whole lot of talking with a lot of diverse people to talk about the diversity in law school and different ways that people can kind of be prepared for them. Because I know you said you wanted to get into it basically because you wanted to make sure that the law had more diverse voices. How do you hope to make a difference?
I really think one, I know that that's one of the main reasons why I want to go into the legal field, because I want to be one of those diverse voices. But also, I think through my mentorship, through my passion for bringing other people along, I think that is extremely important. And I feel like sometimes people will get in these spaces and think and not think to look back on the younger generation who are trying to get into these spaces. And a lot of times, the Black and POC individuals that are desiring to be in the legal profession or any other profession, they're not privy or aware of what resources and programs and initiatives that might help them succeed more. And if you are in this position and you are aware and privy, I think it's your duty and your role to go back and be like, hey, you need to look into this. Hey, you need to look into this. Because a lot of times, because there's only so many of us, there's only 5% of, the lawyers in the United States is African American. And so if we're not taking the time to go back to look back in the younger generation, then who is,
I think that, with just being 5% of the lawyer population, but we're probably 90 or 80% of the people who need lawyers, it kind of makes a difference if you're in a sticky situation and your lawyer knows about your culture, not because they read it, but because they've lived it. And I think that that really changes the way people feel about their lawyers when they know their lawyer has at least lived somewhat of a lifestyle like they have. And I know that when you become a judge, that that'll make a difference too. How long do you think you'll clerk before you try and go ahead and be a judge?
For term clerks, you're only allowed to be a term clerk for 4 years. So that could be either one long clerkship or two different clerkships. It just depends on how long you want to do it. I would personally like 1 to 2 clerkships. And then depending on the level that you want to be a judge at, whether it's state, whether it's federal, it depends on how long it'll take you to get to that judgeship. I would hope that maybe in like my 30s or so, like I will be at the point where I can either be like a state judge or like go into the be a federal judge. But I think regardless, and like going back to your point about having people in these positions that know our stories, know our experiences, I think even if I were to clerk for a white judge or anything like that, having clerks that are able to be in the chambers and like let the judges know like, hey, like you should think about this because you might not know, even though they might be an ally or something like that. I think it's important just having us even in those smaller spaces as well can make the biggest difference.
Right, because you don't necessarily have to sit on the bench in order to make a difference. Like you said, us in the smaller spaces where you can be like, I think that this is it because everybody needs advice and everybody goes to somebody for something. It's good to have someone who knows the walk in the places that can advocate for you. So once you become it, because we're already going to say it, once you become a judge, what do you really hope your impact will be on the community or on the world?
I really hope that I am able to continue to give insight and advice into just the legal field in general. I feel like it can be such an elite space and just like I think higher education in general, it can be hard to kind of break into. And so my goal is that I'm really able to kind of just demystify the legal field just in general. And I really hope that I kind of be able to emulate what my current judge that I'm working for, she does a lot of work outside of the bench. She does stuff with NABOLSA. She does stuff with foreign judges and other organizations outside of the country. So I think it's really important that I do a lot more than just what's on the bench. And while that's extremely important and being able to speak to the individuals that are coming through my courtroom, I think it's also important to speak to the individuals that won't be in my courtroom, but can still benefit from my path, my journey, and what I've learned over the years.
I love that. Making sure that you're making some type of impact outside of just where you are is always going to be the key. And I think that you'll go far. We're definitely going to have you back next year to see how much farther you've gotten. And
Yeah,
then, right after you graduate, we're going to need to keep up with you to make sure that we follow it out. And when you become a judge, we want to say that everyone kind of heard it here first. Mecca, I thank you so much for being on with us today. I've appreciated this conversation, and I know we'll be speaking again.
of course. Thank you so much for having me. I love being able to have these types of conversations with people
Absolutely.
and just give more advice and insight into what to expect in law school and the legal field in general. So definitely would love to be back if possible.
Absolutely. Thank you.